All right. Well, first of all, my buddy John just texted me and said the word is pronounced analogous. So we all had it wrong. But in any event, let me just say that analogous
sounded pretty good to me.
It's analogous. In any event, First Trust Bank presents this the last segment, and this segment we're coming into with John McMullen live from MetLife Stadium as the Eagles lose 20-14. This is the Pond Lehocky Eagles postgame show live from Ocean Casino. You are watching us on 6abc.com. and also the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. So let's get to Mr. McMullen and his analysis of the Eagles no longer being undefeated. And, you know, John, I've boiled it down to the one play that allows the Jets to win the game, a mistake by the quarterback on an interception, and then the chance to get back at it, and they move it 2 yards. So apparently I'm supposed to not look at that and say that, you know, it happens. They're going to lose the game every now and then, and this was the one that they lost. Your thoughts?
Well, it does happen. I mean, you look in San Francisco losing to Cleveland with P.J. Walker. So, yeah, this is the NFL. Look, anytime you turn it over 4 times and you lose the turnover margin 4-0, it's astonishing you're even in the game. I would say that part of it. But, yeah, Jaylen Hurts played poorly and certainly played poorly closing the game. You know, but there's plenty of blame to go around. I heard D. Gunn while I was waiting for you guys. I like his description. I mean, Jake Elliott's missing 37-yard field goals. You mentioned the turnovers. DeAndre Swift had a terrible game running the football. He fumbles. Other than A.J. Brown and the defense, I think you can put a lot on everybody, but certainly the quarterback's going to get most of it. You can't throw that football into double coverage. That last play, I don't even know. I mean, you can blame the coaching staff for that. Nowhere to go with the football. A lot of blame to go around, but certainly, yeah, you know, the Jets should not have been in a position to steal this game. They did steal this game. And, you know, all you can think about moving forward is maybe this is a wake-up call. Yeah, because this team was feeling themselves a little bit, maybe a little bit too haughty. And maybe this gives them a little punch in the mouth. So if you want to put a positive spin, you can look at it that way.
Hey, John, welcome to the Bermuda Triangle, which is the discussion of the pluses and minuses of this Eagles loss in this game. Be careful. Tread water lightly, my friend. I will add that as well. But let me ask you this. How does this team justify running the football only 22 times against the defense that was giving up a buck 46 a game and putting the ball up in there? I understand they try to get greedy because the Jets were decimated on the back end. But the way this Eagles offense ran the football, I don't understand how they only ran the ball 22 times in this game.
Well, I think you're right. I think they got a little bit greedy, especially when the news broke that Sauce Gardner would not be in the game, DJ Reed. So really they were out their top 4 cornerbacks in this game. And to a certain degree, you saw A.J. Brown. It came to a point where you're like, just keep going to A.J. I mean, Devontae Smith is another guy. I expected a big game. You don't see Devontae Smith drop passes. He dropped a couple passes today. So a lot of things went wrong for the Eagles. But the running game, and people are focused on the running game, they had exactly 0 yards from the traditional running game in the first half. In the first 30 minutes of football, I think Boston Scott had 2. And DeAndre Swift was at -2. So they weren't effective either. And obviously the strength of the Jets is up front. I get the number in, but, and I talked about this with Jody during the week. I think a lot of those numbers with the Jets defense is skewed because it's a really talented group that was obviously struggling for different reasons. Mainly the offense can't do anything, and the snowball starts going down the hill. So when you look at Quinton Williams, Quincy Williams, C.J. Mosley, John Franklin Myers, all those guys up front are really, really good players. So from a coaching perspective, if you're asking me, I would have attacked the corners as well. And if they didn't turn the football over, they win this game easily. But they turned the football over 4 times.
John, I don't disagree with you much, but I disagree with you tonight. There's 9 possessions that the Eagles had tonight, 9 possessions that the Jets had tonight. And you talk about the numbers. The Eagles only ran the ball with the running back 6 times in the first half, so there's no way to really define how good or how effective the running game could have been when you have your quarterback throw the ball 25 times in the first half of the football game. And to be honest with you, we don't even know if it's 25 because he had 10 runs in the first half. And the one thing that the NFL doesn't do, which I would love to see them do, especially with so many running quarterbacks in the league now, is differentiate between called run plays for the quarterback and scrambles for the quarterback, because those pass plays that turns into scrambles, they designate those as running plays when they truly are passing plays. Yeah. So even with Jaylen Hurts throwing the ball 45 times, that number was well over 50 in my opinion. And I think that their identity is to run the football. This is exactly what I talk about. And I know I should be asking you the question, but just bear with me for a second. I know that the thought is you throw the ball early, you get a lead, and then you run the clock out later on. But it always comes back to this. When throwing the ball doesn't work necessarily the way you want it to, what do? Do you keep throwing it, or do you go back to the running game? Where if your identity is to run the football and you're the #1 rushing team in the National Football League and yet you still won't run the football, this is kind of what you get. When the offense throwing the ball doesn't produce what it produces and you ask your quarterback to throw the ball 50 times, the odds of him throwing interceptions go up exponentially, in my opinion.
Well, I agree with that. The more times you throw the football, the more opportunities you saw early in the first half with the ball that went off Dallas Goedert's intercepted. Obviously, that's not on Jaylen Hurts, and it's just a ricochet play, and all of a sudden you have the football going the other way. I will say, and I'm not even talking about the quarterback runs, the quarterback running game that you were talking about. I'm talking about Boston Scott 2 for 2, and DeAndre Swift 4 for -2. So that's 6 carries, that's granted, but you're getting 0 yards in those 6 carries. Now you got to be an awful disciplined coach to say, oh, let me keep going to 6 carries where I'm getting 0 yards, when conversely, you're throwing the football all over the lot, and that's what they were doing in the first half. Jaylen had 172 yards by halftime. You take away that 1 interception, things look better. AJ's at 5 for 89. Looked like he could beat the Jets at will with those backup corners in place, and he probably could have if they would have stuck with it. So I get the framework of, look, and I get people, that's what it is with the quarterback in this league. Jaylen Hurts played poorly in the second half of this game, and he made some really big mistakes that people aren't used to seeing him making. But I think that clouds the fact that there's other guys, and that's why I'm glad Deacon brought up Jake Elliott. Jake Elliott doesn't miss 37-yard field goals. He did today. Devontae Smith doesn't drop passes. He did today. DeAndre Swift has been tremendous all year. Guess what? He was bad today. Bad. Not mediocre. Bad. So while I get people want to blame the quarterback, and feel free, I mean, that's part of the job description. Plenty of other contributors to this loss, especially on the offensive side of the football.
John, can I'm sure this will come up later in the week, but I'll ask the question now, and maybe you can ask Nick Sirianni. At what point in time do you realize that you have a problem at right tackle with Lane Johnson out? And if you're going to consistently throw the ball every down and you're not going to give, Jack Driscoll help over there, that he's getting beat like a drum, you've got to give him help, whether you chip with the back or whether you go 12 personnel and keep Jack Stoll in on that side to help him.
Well, they did give Jack Driscoll a lot of help, especially in the second half, and the devastating part of that is obviously it didn't necessarily work that well, and that's disappointing. Now, I mean, this team understands the numbers coming into this game, because I had to look them up. The Eagles are 90-51-1 when Lane Johnson is on the field, 13-23 when he's not.
Wow.
Other than a quarterback. I mean, they don't win when he's not on the field. Now, obviously, he started this game, so that'll skew that statistic. But he wasn't available for most of it. And yet, everybody knows they're not the same team when Lane Johnson's not on the field. And remember, it's not only Lane Johnson, Cam Jurgens, the starting right guard, is not on the field. So if you think about it, how many reps during the summer did Suo Opeta, who only played left guard, by the way, did Suo Opeta and Jack Driscoll have together? Not very much, so that impacted the game as well. They did help, but Jaylen Hurts was obviously hurried at times, and that affected him, and I get it. But the bottom line is a lot of contributions to this loss, and with Zach Wilson playing the way he's playing, it's almost unconscionable that they lose a game like this. Defensively, they only gave up under 250 yards. They really only gave up one touchdown, and they allowed the Jets to score that touchdown to try to come back and win the football game on the offensive side of the ball. So there's a lot of blame to go around, most of it on the offensive side, some of it on the coaching staff as well. But, this is the NFL. And if I told you that San Francisco was going to lose to a Cleveland team with P.J. Walker, Temple Tough and all, you would have called me crazy. Well, they did. And probably would have called me crazy if I said Zach Wilson's Jets are going to beat the Eagles. It's the NFL. It's not college where Alabama's getting a week off against Furman. Everybody has good players. You saw Garrett Wilson. You saw Quinnen Williams. These guys are big-time players. And the Jets made plays when they had to make plays, and you got to tip your hat, at least to a certain degree, to them.
Hey, John, can you say that again so Mike Missinelli can hear you?
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody there. I mean, if Garrett Wilson, if Aaron Rodgers was playing this year, Garrett Wilson would already be a superstar. That's how good he is. But obviously he doesn't have the vehicle to get him the football. I think most people know how good Quinnen Williams is. If they don't, they can watch the tape of this game. These are impactful players, and it's just difficult to win in the NFL when you don't have consistency at the quarterback position. This team, a lot of people, including myself, thought this team was going to be a legit Super Bowl contender with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. They're no longer, but that doesn't mean the other guys aren't good. Those guys are still good, and a bunch of them showed up today.
Right. I obviously agree with you on that one, John.
Happens,
but
Mike.
as far as the rest of this team goes,
don't worry, I'm letting Forrest get in there.
Here we go.
As far as this team goes, he may be a superstar if another quarterback is playing, but the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback, I believe, is a superstar. Did not play to that level, nor did really anybody around him. A.J. Brown, another great game. But here's my bigger problem: you don't score a point after the 5:32 mark of the second quarter. That's almost hard to do against this Jets team. Defense, not having starters, obviously is a big part as to why the Eagles should have scored more points in this game. So I'm curious, what was said in the locker room, what was said by the head coach as to why nothing seemed to work right offensively from the 5:32 mark of the second quarter for the rest of the game?
Well, yeah, I mean, Nick, mentioned obviously the turnovers, and that goes both ways. If you want to point something out about the defense, which played well overall, they haven't generated a turnover in a bit, so they need to get back to that. But yeah, he mentioned it 3 different times. If you lose 4-0 in the turnover ratio, you should probably lose by 2 or 3 touchdowns. So the fact that the Eagles were in this game and had a chance to win in the final 2 minutes is kind of amazing. Kind of speaks to the talent on the team as a whole. But yeah, nobody's saying the quarterback played well. The quarterback, Nick said, that's a play Jaylen wants back. He's not lying. Obviously, that is a very bad throw. The final interception. No question about it, reminiscent of Tampa, the interception in Tampa where he threw it, or that might have been Minnesota where he threw it in double coverage. But guys, coming into this game, and we talked about it a lot, Jaylen Hurts won 22 of his last 23 starts. 4 quarterbacks in the history of football. I forget which one. One of you mentioned Peyton Manning. Everybody has bad games. Peyton Manning, Joe Montana,
there you go.
Tom Brady, whoever you want to name has had poor games. We haven't seen it with Jaylen Hurts really poor games recently.
John,
it was going to happen. It happened today.
John, I get it. All right? They didn't do this. They didn't do that. Bada beep, bada bip. I get the whole thing. The bottom line is there's 2 minutes left, okay? The quarterback at that point has control of the game. They have the lead. You're not even asking him to do anything except to hold on for the last 2 minutes. So you don't make that kind of a throw. Even with his 3 turnovers earlier in the game, if he doesn't make that throw, as crappy as they played, they still win the game. I understand that they didn't do this, didn't do that. They played a crappy game. They're still in the lead, and they've got control of the football with the quarterback. This is all I'm saying today. No. And I get that he's 22-1.
It's very fair. It's very fair to criticize that throw to Dallas Goedert. Very fair. I think they got the ball with just under 5 minutes to go, and it looked like they were going to do their classic, put the game away. It started with a short pass to Swift. Then they got a first down with Swift running the football, probably his only decent run in the game. I got to look down what I wrote. Then it was another pass to Swift. Then it was Swift up the middle for nothing. Then it was a pass to Goddard for 11 yards on 3rd and 7. So here we go again. It's Jaylen Hurts making a big play on 3rd down. 2:24 left in the game. You think, all right, Eagles are going to close this out. Kenny Gainwell for 1 yard. People are talking about the running game. DeAndre Swift for 0 yards. All of a sudden, you're at 3rd and 9 coming out of the 2-minute warning. That's how that was set up. Now, if I'm Nick Sirianni and I'm coming out of that 2-minute warning at my 46, so minus 46, I'm going to run the football. The Jets are out of timeouts. You're knocking it down to about 115. Then I'm going to let Braden Mann get revenge against his old team and pin Zach Wilson back at the inside the 20-yard line and say, if this kid can beat me, beat me. That's how I would have handled it. Now, Nick said you got to trust your quarterback. And I get that as well because Jaylen Hurts has earned trust. He has earned trust. And he made a bad play.
But even if he throws an incompletion, John, he throws an incompletion. What you just said happens anyway. They kick the football. The only thing he can't do there is misread a covers and throw an interception. That's all I'm saying.
Well, the only difference is if you say, because I was talking to another reporter, said, all right, make it a one read and say if it's not there, just throw it away. Well, then you're not taking the 40-plus seconds off the clock. That's why I want to run the football.
Okay.
I want to run the football. Yeah, I get it. It's 3rd and 9, and you're not going to get it, especially against that front, especially the way Swift and Gainwell had been running. You're not going to get it. I understand that. Or you're going to take 45 seconds off the clock minimum, and then you can punt the football. And Zach Wilson ain't, even though he only needs a field goal, he doesn't need a touchdown. I'll take my chances there. I'll take my chances. That's the way I would have rolled the dice. But I do believe that Jaylen Hurts has earned the trust that Nick Sirianni gave him. Maybe he lost some of that trust with that decision because that's a bad decision. That part I'm not going to erase. That was a terrible decision by Jaylen Hurts. We can all agree with that, I think.
Hey, John, I'd put it out there a couple of times during the game and, of course, in our post-game show here that so far the X-ray on Lane Johnson's ankle is negative. They still have to do an MRI tomorrow. As for other players, there were a whole plethora of players that went down for the Eagles in this game. Do you have any updates? Did Nick Sirianni reveal anything about any of the other players? Because, man, do they have a heavyweight game coming up next week.
Yeah, well, you know, Nick, and injuries, he's not going to give it away this early. But Reed left. He got hit on that blindside block where was looked like a really poor play by Alan Lazard because the Jets were moving. Um, so he's back with the rib. Eli Ricks, who was rotating with Josh Jobe today, went out with a knee injury. Um, so the one, obviously, Lane, because of his impact on the team. And plus, it's that ankle, and Lane has had issues. In fact, on the one ankle, he had a tightrope surgery first. It didn't work, and then he had to have essentially reconstructive surgery. So he's had a lot of issues, and that's the one I'm concerned with. And X-rays being clean is hopeful, but that's one where you got to cross your fingers. You really do, because I gave you the numbers. They're just not the same team. And anybody who thinks, Jack Driscoll's a pretty good backup, but anybody who thinks you can replace Lane Johnson, it just doesn't work that way. And the Eagles already know that.
Yeah, that's why I'm more apt to say, okay, let's minimize how many people we send out in the route and make sure that we get Jaylen Hurts protected if that's what you're going to do, or run the ball a little bit more. I know the focal point, John, is really on the offense and how poorly they played today. The defense held on as long as they could today. But taking into consideration the amount and the magnitude of the injuries that the Eagles suffered in game, I'm not talking about before the game, I'm just talking about in game. Do you think that impacts how Sean Desai calls defenses? Because I get the sense that, I see him, he wants to be aggressive in certain spots against certain teams and certain quarterbacks. But I see him, the way that the cornerbacks play is counterintuitive to what he actually is trying to do. It's one thing to send a blitz. It's another thing to have, your cornerbacks 5 to 10 yards off the ball. And even a guy like Zach Wilson can look up and see the pressure coming. He can pre-snap read it and look over and see, well, hell, I got the slant right now. When are we going to see some of that change? Because it's obvious that our pass rush is pretty darn ferocious. There's no doubt about that. And teams realize that the way to negate that is either by running the football, which they haven't been able to do successfully, or by, quick slants, quick outs, and hitches. And if our cornerbacks are going to be off the ball that far, then it's kind of counterintuitive to actually bring the pressure.
Well, part of it is the scheme and Vic Fangio philosophy that we talk about all the time, limit explosive plays. But part, especially today, look, you don't have Darius Slay. You're rotating Josh Jobe and Eli Ricks. Eli's an undrafted rookie. You don't have one of your starting safeties. Justin Evans is on injured reserve. They shut Sidney Brown down again, which surprised me because I talked to Sidney on Thursday. He said he was going to play. So he missed the game. So you have to go to Terrell Edmonds, and then Reed Blankenship gets injured in game, and you have to go to Mekhi Gardner, who made his NFL debut and is a cornerback, and he made his NFL debut as a practice squad elevation playing safety. So that's kind of difficult. One of the injuries I forgot to mention was Bradley Roby, who left with a shoulder injury as well. So they lost the nickel corner again at some point. And bottom line is they gave up 244 yards. They gave up 155 passing, and they gave up 2 of 11 third downs. That's a win from Sean Desai's standpoint. And, yeah, is part of it predicated on the front? I would say the majority is predicated on that front and how they dominate. And today it was Hassan Reddick, and they didn't have Jalen Carter, so that impacted things. But they're really, really good up front, and they're not as good on the back end. So, yeah, sometimes Sean tries to protect them a little bit. But those numbers, even understanding it's Zach Wilson, 244 in the NFL, in the modern NFL, 155 passing, 2 of 11 on third downs. Those are winning numbers. If the offense holds its water even a little bit. And by the way, they didn't even give up a touchdown. They gave up 4 field goals, and some of them on short fields, and they allowed them to score the touchdown so the offense could get the ball back. If you're running down a list of people to criticize, the defense is way down on that list tonight. Way down on that list.
Don't get me wrong. I have no criticisms whatsoever for Sean Desai or how the defense played. I'm just wondering, because what I see him wanting to do and how the cornerbacks are playing is very counterintuitive. Now, they made the adjustment last week where they got up and were more aggressive, and they had a very good day rushing the passer. But with a guy like Zach Wilson, my point is that, if you're going to play off and then bring pressure and allow him to see pre-snap what you're doing, even, as bad a quarterback as we think he is, he's got the ability to make some throws, some quick slants and make some completions. That's my only commentary. You don't blame the defense, for what happened today. This is purely on the offense and the offensive play calling, in my opinion.
Yeah, and look, Zach has arm talent. Everybody knows it, but he just sort of hasn't figured out the rest of it yet. Even today, when he got a little bit cooking with Garrett Wilson, and I'll throw Nathaniel Hackett in this bucket as well. There are times he's on Bradbury. I'm like, just put Wilson on, because the Eagles weren't moving Bradbury with Wilson. They could have lined him up against Jobs or Ricks when Ricks was in the game, whenever they wanted, and they got away from it too much. So yeah, there are things you could pick apart the Jets for offensively as well, and not taking advantage of maybe the one thing they could have taken advantage of. But I'm with you, Seth. I mean, I constantly complain about this scheme and about how many teams play this scheme and about how passive it is, and about, especially when you have cornerbacks like James Bradbury and Darius Slay, sometimes you got to take advantage of your abilities there. But tonight with Job and Ricks, it's not as big a concern, because you have to protect those guys at least a little bit.
John, you talked about the last possession of the Philadelphia Eagles after the last interception by Jaylen Hurts. They score the touchdown. They get a shot at Jaylen Hurts during the broadcast on the sidelines, just looking defeated. I have never seen Jaylen Hurts look that defeated. And one of my favorite things about watching him play is knowing that you have such a mentally tough quarterback. And I am confident he'll bounce back and he'll have a good game against the Dolphins and all that. But what did he say after the game as far as what went wrong in this game? Because everything, as you mentioned, when it came to the offense, just wasn't clicking tonight against the New York Jets of all teams, with all the injuries they had as well.
Yeah, in front of the microphone, we got a bunch of Jaylen Hurts-isms, accountability, holding yourself to the standard, all the top 10 hits.
The greatest hit CD. Yeah, sure.
An opportunity to use to move forward, and that's the way Jaylen, and that's fine. But a couple of the players spoke in the locker room, and they said, Jaylen wanted to speak to the team and took responsibility for the loss. So that, to me, is more important than what he says in front of the cameras. But Jalen's well schooled. I learned a couple weeks ago that Nick Saban actually has a class for his players, and they're not allowed to talk to the media for their first year. They get media redshirted, and he teaches them to best handle the media. So in a lot of ways, it's understandable with guys who've been at Alabama. It's just the way they're taught. But to me, the more important part was he took accountability in front of his teammates. And look, I don't think anybody should be surprised by that. Everybody knows what a good teammate Jaylen Hurts is, and he's not going to say what I said. And, well, if Jake makes a field goal, and which he always does, and Devontae doesn't drop passes, DeAndre Swift doesn't fumble, the ball doesn't get ricocheted into Quinnen Williams' arms, he's not that guy. He's not going to be pointing fingers. And it's the old adage, if you're pointing a finger, there's probably 5 pointing back at you. So with quarterbacks, it's always we when you win. It's always me when you lose. And Jaylen Hurts understands that better than most.
John, thank you for spending some time with us from MetLife. It's kind of shocking, to be frank, that they're undefeated. I mean, they're no longer undefeated, losing to the Jets. But I'm going to go with these guys. It happens.
It does happen.
Thank you.
I knew
Hey,
we weren't.
Mike.
Yes.
Before I go, one last thing. Because San Francisco played this afternoon, they were still the final undefeated team for the second consecutive year. So
Yeah,
there's
they
your
were.
positive spin.
There you go, Mike.
And it was the first road loss for Jaylen Hurts ever, right? He was 11-0 coming into this game. Thank you,
No,
John.
well,
We appreciate
first
it.
in a long time.
First in a long time.
yeah,
Be safe.
First in a long time.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you. There he is. All right. So,
You hear that, Seth? Did you hear that?
What's that?
What, did he put me in my place with it?
No. That you just actually admitted that it happened.
No, I was being facetious.
No, you weren't.
warmed-
You know it was hard.
We warmed down. Don't
Being
worry.
totally
about it.
facetious.
We warmed down.
Look at it like this.
We warmed down.
The game at the end is like Campbell's tomato soup.
Uh-huh.
It's condensed.
Uh-huh.
So it's condensed in that moment, which makes it a more important moment, which means you cannot make a mistake like that. That's all I'm saying. All right, is that good enough? Campbell's tomato soup.
Mike,
Gun.
Every
you
human
have the
being has imperfect moments, Mike. We all do.
Mike, you have the smoking
Jaylen
gun.
Hurts had his. today.
You have the smoking gun. Jalen Hurts saying that to his team means he agrees with you, Mike.
He does. Jalen agrees with
See
me.
that?
Took
Accountability.
responsibility for the loss.
Did we
the
not say
accountability
Jalen
in
had
front
to
of
be
the
held
team.
accountable?
Oh,
Did we not say that?
You knew he was going to hold himself accountable.
Absolutely. We
That's
said that.
fine.
He's just agreeing with
And
me.
I'm not.
No,
I'm
we
not
agree with all
saying-
of us.
I'm not saying that that I don't agree with that with the fact that he played a bad game. I'm just saying that bad games happen. If you play a sport long enough, you're going to have a bad game at every level that you can imagine. Just like you had a bad game at second base at some point in time.
The game is condensed
Oh.
in that moment.
We got Michael Jordan comparisons. And now we got Campbell soup.
We're all over the place. And we got bada beep, bada bip as well. With
What the heck does that
the
even
hell
mean?
is
quoting
that?
Sonny Corleone from The Godfather, by the way. In case
All over your Ivy League suit.
didn't know what that was. The Diamond Debate is coming up next with Kayla Santiago, and we're going to hear about an exciting venture that Seth took to Mark's Jewelers. And, of course, John McMullen is brought to us by Del Val Insurance, where you can save up to 40% on your car insurance right now. Call your partners, Fran or Jim, at Del Val Insurance. Here's how you can connect with Del Val.
Warming them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.